The status of American women has been changing throughout American history, and this presentation will focus on changes that women were experiencing in the first half of the 19th century. As you can see from this image here, these are middle-class women who are very traditional in many ways. If you look at their dress, the restrictiveness of their garments, the image that they portray here, they had sort of their own world, that what we could call their own sphere, their own area of life. And this fact itself became a major issue in the women's movement. Uh, why was there a movement for women's rights at that time in history? Well, if you look back earlier, and for most of America throughout the 19th century, women were much more likely to work on farms than they were to live in cities. Their husbands were more often farmers than businessmen or bankers or lawyers or jobs like that. So the changes that took place happened not so much to farm women, but to middle class women. Now, a lot of these women had left the farm, uh, and or their daughters were leaving the farm, and they were encountering new forms of social life. On farms, women did uh, all kinds of physical work, and they were never far removed from the work that their husbands were doing or their fathers were doing. Work and home were not separated very much. You had a family farm, and work and home life were really almost one and the same. Um, but the market revolution, which we've already looked at, led more and more people to live in cities and towns and not on farms. And there were some very important results of this. One is a separation of work from home life. Two, going right along with this, was the creation of a women's sphere, the home. The home was a woman's domain, her uh, center of influence, or center of her life. And work was something that her husbands went to outside the home. And unlike life on the farm, they were quite separate from each other. Uh, and as a result, this women's movement, which came out of this separation between work and home life, was concentrated mostly in the northeastern United States, which was the most industrialized area, the most urbanized area, the area with the greatest influence by the middle class. Uh, these middle class women um, developed a kind of a set of attitudes, a way of looking at things. And it's often been called the cult of true womanhood. There's a very famous article by Barbara Welter many years ago with this title. Um, it's based on the idea that women's sphere and men's sphere were separate, as we've said, and it identified certain qualities of what Barbara Welter called true womanhood. One of them was piety. A true woman had to be religious. Another was purity. She had to be upstanding, of the highest moral character. And the implication here was that maybe her husband was not, but she had to be. There was a double standard going on here for men and women. Uh, Also, submission was a value. Uh, in marriage vows at that time, the word obey was present. A woman had to promise to obey her husband, to submit to him. He was the boss, and her job was to uh, follow in his program, to do what he wanted her to do. The other ideal was domesticity. That means being in the home. The center of her life should be in the home and in the things that take place in the home, such as child raising, cooking, cleaning, things like that. And to create an atmosphere that will be wholesome and moral for her husband to come home to. women were extremely limited at this time. They normally did not speak in public, and certainly speak speeches or to give talks to groups of people. That's something that they normally did not do. When it happened, it was unusual. Uh, they could not hold male occupations. In fact, they could not hold most occupations. Uh, Areas of business and law and medicine and politics, for example, were closed off to them. One exception is that women could be teachers, but even that was justified in terms of the idea of a woman's sphere, uh, because to be a teacher was to uh, care for young children, and that was an extension of the role that mothers had. They could not, however, be college professors. That didn't happen. The law uh, reinforced these attitudes toward women. There was a doctrine which goes all the way back to the English common law called coverture. If you think of the word cover, you begin to get the idea of its meaning. Um, a married woman was covered, was absorbed into the legal status of her husband. She was not, under the law, a separate adult person. Um, she could not own property in her own name legally. She could not sign a contract. If she earned money, the money legally went to her husband. She could not even keep the money that she earned if she happened to have a job of some kind outside the home. And she certainly could not vote. And this was considered to be a radical proposal. When women met at Seneca Falls, New York in 1848, there was a split over whether to demand voting rights, because to some people there who were very favorable to women's rights, it seemed like it was asking for something so radical that they would never be able to achieve it. The first exceptions to that were in school board elections, because women were considered to be able to deal with the affairs of schools. But even that was not guaranteed. And with a few minor exceptions, for a time New Jersey was one of them, women simply could not vote. Legally, a husband and a wife were one person, but that person was the husband. And part of the thinking about voting was that it was redundant. It didn't make sense for a woman to vote because her political participation was carried out through her husband. He voted for both of them. Under the law, a woman was treated like a minor child. Certainly a person, a citizen, but not one who had the status of an adult. There were some inroads in women's rights, but they were slow. They came to be educated more and more because this promoted Republican values, partly because as mothers, they would be responsible for educating their sons. And schools did spring up in the early 19th century for women, mostly middle-class women, not farm women, so that they could be good Republican mothers. Republican, small r, meaning one who embodies the values of a republic. There were married women's property rights laws in the 1830s and later. But the reason for this is not obvious. The main reason for this is that men in a very unpredictable economy could often fall into debt, and they were very mobile. They would move frequently, and if they went bankrupt, these laws could prevent the family from losing its home or its property in order to protect the family. So women had these rights to partly to protect their husband's property, but to protect the family's property, not so much because they were seen as property owners in their own right. A milestone in the women's movement is the Seneca Falls Convention in 1848. It was the beginning of the modern women's movement. It was led by Elizabeth Cady Stanton, shown pictured here, and Lucretia Mott. They had backgrounds in abolitionism. Stanton had attended a meeting in London, England, of the World Anti-Slavery Convention in 1840, and because she was a woman, she was forced to sit in the balcony. She could not fully participate. And she, of course, resented this a great deal. Um, Lucretia Mott was a Quaker, and Quakers, were among the leaders of the early women's movement, just as they were often leaders in the abolitionist movement. There was a close connection between the abolition of slavery and women's rights. In class, we'll be discussing the publication of that convention. It's known as the Declaration of Sentiments. You'll see a handout on that, which will also be posted on Moodle. Women who began seeking the right to vote, known as suffrage, in 1848 had to wait 72 years until 1920 before it was guaranteed to women on a national level. Of those women who attended the convention at Seneca Falls in 1848, only one, Charlotte Woodward, lived to see women gain the right to vote on a national scale. The sad irony for her was that she was sick on election day in 1920, the first time she would have been able to vote, and died the next year, and as far as anyone can tell, she never did actually cast a vote. This was a very, very long struggle. Later on in the course, we'll look at the later women's movement in the late 19th and early 20th century, leading up to the victory in 1920.